Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April meeting of City of Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Call to order, please.
Corey Coons.
Here.
Chad Kiger.
Here.
Bruce Polly.
Here.
Ron Edwards.
Here.
Lori Gross. Here.
Everybody here. We, has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from last month? And if there's no issues or questions, we'd like a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We've got two items tonight. Old business is an application that was continued from the March meeting, docket 25-6. Davis Building Group requests two development standard variances to install a monument sign located at 112 Birchwood Drive here in Lebanon. The property is zoned residential 2 and is in the thoroughfare overlay district. Ben?
Good evening, board members. This is a site and a project that should be familiar to the Board of Zoning Appeals. This is the property that Davis Building Group purchased a couple years ago and constructed a home on the site that they are currently using as a sales office and model home. And the reason it was before the board is this property originally was zoned for commercial uses. And if they want to pull up the screen, we can kind of look here. It actually, to the south is Interstate 65, to the west is a real estate office, so that's zoned commercial. This property down just to the southeast here is actually, ironically, also another model home and sales office, so it's actually a commercial use as well. And when Davis was looking at building the home here, their ultimate goal here eventually is to sell this as a residence. And so they wanted the property to be zoned for residential use. And so that they ended up rezoning the property to residential zoning district. And then because they were going to be constructing a home that for a period of time was going to be used for a non-residential use, then they put a use variance in place from the Board of Zoning Appeals to allow that long-term but temporary use as a sales office and model home. And so now they've put themselves in a situation now where they need commercial signage for the property, but it's zoned for residential use. And so we're back before the board because of the fact that it's a residentially zoned property, but with a non-residential use. And they're wanting to put non-residential signage out here, similar to what their neighbors on both sides of them have. They did come in with an original proposal to do a sign similar to Hallmark Homes to the southeast. It's kind of a 2 wood posts and a 4x8 sheet of plywood. It's a little bit nicer than that, but not much nicer than that. And I said, if you were going to come in and request a variance to allow commercial size signage here, I'd prefer to see something more permanent, more than what we would expect from a typical commercial use. And so they went back to the proverbial drawing board and came back in with a new proposal. And I gave them some direction on size to make sure that they met, assuming this was zone general business commercial zoning classification, looking at the speed on the street and what size would be permitted, height and size permitted in the commercial zoning district. I said that should be your target to meet those maximum standards of that commercial zoning district. It does require a variance as a result, but it's something we wanted to make sure that we're following our commercial zoning district standards. And so that's what they've done. And then we'll pull this up here. Is come up with a sign with a solid brick base that says Davis Homes, and then a sign for the model home with the hours that it's open. On the sign that you see here, they have done a little bit of a V shape given the angle of the interstate to make sure it's visible from both directions of the interstate, or as visible as possible from both directions of the interstate. And so this is the sign that's being proposed in the general business zoning district. Good commercial sign standards would allow for a 12-foot tall sign, a maximum of 45 square feet. And so what you see here is something that's about 11 feet tall, I believe. Actually not quite even that. It's about 9 or 10 feet tall. I'm trying to get the total on here from the sign standard. It's about 9 feet tall, I believe, and it's 45 square feet. So that sign face that says Davis Model Homes, 45 square feet. So they are under the maximum allowed in the commercial sign district standards. So just for clarification, if you're a non-residential use in a residential zoning district, there are sign standards But due to the fact that they have commercial uses with commercial signage on either side of them, they did want to request a variance to allow them essentially to match the standards that their neighbors are using. That's the reason for the variance to allow a sign of this size. And so that is the nature of the request tonight, is for a sign that is taller and larger than permitted. So they would be permitted 8 feet tall and 32 square feet. And they are at 12 feet tall and 45 square feet to match the general business sign standards for height and size. That's the reason for the variance request. And then I will walk through the evaluation of the criteria for a consideration of development standards. The first is the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Relief from the sign height and size requirements will not be injurious to the public. The proposed sign will meet all applicable setbacks, and it is constructed of quality materials and will not cause any public safety issues. The second is use and value of the area adjacent will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Staff has determined that the use and value of the area adjacent will not be affected. The proposed sign is of quality materials and is similarly sized to commercial signs located on adjacent properties, both east and west. And the final one is a strict application of the terms of UDO will result in practical difficulties. Staff has determined the strict application will result in practical difficulties. And while the subject property is zoned for residential uses, its current use is commercial in nature, and the properties directly adjacent on both sides are zoned for commercial uses and contain commercial ground signs similar to what they're requesting. And so the variance request would allow for the installation of a sign that's similar to those contained on neighboring properties. And because and one thing we did want to note here is because the subject property is intended to revert back to residential use at some point, that at some unknown point in the future, it's anticipated and expected that the sign would be removed at that time when it reverts back to residential, so it doesn't become an offsite advertising sign for Davis Homes. And so with that then, planning staff recommends approval of the development standards variance request to permit relief from the height and size requirements, subject to the following condition, as I just suggested, and that would be that the applicant remove the sign from the subject property no later than 3 months after the home on the property permanently reverts back to residential use. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is this sign to be lit?
Yes.
Lit so you can see it from the interstate during evening hours.
And I have some questions about the neighboring properties. To the left and the right, or the east to north and south, I think it would be. Are those zoned residential also?
No, actually to the west, it's zoned general business. I believe the one on the east is also zoned general business, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it unusual that we would have a residential zone in between two general business zones?
Not necessarily, but we did talk about that with them when they wanted to go forward with the residential zoning classification and change that. It's not necessarily out of place, because if you look, you have the one at the corner, if they're going to pull the screen up again. The one down at the southeast corner is on commercial, but these are all residential properties that are directly east here. So it's not, ironically, this one out at the southeast corner kind of is the one that's now on an island as a result. The rest, it does match the zoning with the rest of what's directly east of it. So it's not totally abnormal to have it like that, but we did discuss with them the merits of keeping it the commercial zoning versus residential zoning. And they wanted to set it up for them to be able to fairly easily convert it to residential and sell it in the future.
And were the properties on the east and west grandfathered in terms of sign requirements, or do you know the history on those?
Both of those signs have been there for quite a while. I don't know the history on the Hallmark sign. It actually wouldn't even meet our commercial sign standards that we have in place now. It's larger than what we would permit. And actually their original proposal was essentially to match the size and height of the Hallmark sign. And so we've actually had them go to a more permanent looking sign and smaller than what they'd originally proposed. And then on the other side, I think they have a sign that meets our commercial standards there. It's a smaller real estate brokerage sign that's on that property.
What is the city's stance on just rezoning the property to commercial and then rezoning it when it's ready to be sold as residential?
Well, so in this case now, it has been rezoned to residential. So when they go sell it as a residential property, there won't need to be any additional action that's taken. So that's why we rezoned it up front, is that'll allow them then a more smooth, efficient process at some point in the future when they go to sell it as a residential use. So I wouldn't say that's a regular occurrence.
Right.
This was somewhat of a unique property where it is adjacent to the interstate. It's not, I wouldn't say the most valuable residential property in the world, but it is in an area where there are other residential uses. It's kind of mixed right in that area.
Okay. And just checking for understanding, because it's zone residential, the commercial sign requirements don't apply.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so as a non-residential use, which they technically are within a residential zoning classification, they are allowed commercial signage, but it's limited in size and height. And so the reason for their request is because they wanted to match the typical commercial sign standards rather than what's permitted in a residential zoning district. Given the fact they're adjacent to the interstate, they wanted a little bit larger size and height to allow for better visibility out there.
And the visual that you showed us of the sign, does that meet our commercial sign requirements?
It does.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions for Ben? Thank you, sir. Okay, does applicant care to address the board?
Sure. Thank you for having us. My name is Paul Carroll. I represent Davis Building Group. I have Ashley Fletcher with Davis as well. Ben, as he does, kind of steals your thunder and has really adequately and very well explained what we're here to do today. The history, Ben mentioned this, the property was initially zoned commercial. We went through, Davis over the years has had model homes. Most municipalities have model home permits, model home timing requirements that you can't use a property as a model home for more than a year typically. We wanted to make this a commercial use, build a model home, but use it in the long term. You know, our expectation is to use this for 10, 20 years, hopefully longer. But then at the end of that use, go ahead and market this and sell it as a residence at some point. So we've went through, got the rezoning, obtained a variance to use this as a model home. And to Ben's point, realized that we needed to get a variance here to allow for commercial signage to match really what is on both neighboring properties, lots. We've done that. We're agreeable with staff. Again, appreciate staff's meeting us on site to discuss the sign, placement, location, design. We are agreeable with the commitment that once this does revert to residential, the sign will be removed. And if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer.
Said that you intend to use this as a model home for 10 to 20 years?
It's a long-term model home. The expectation, I mean, we just built it within the last 12 months, I think we've completed it. I've got good traffic out there. And really, this is kind of the Davis on your lot program, which is more of a custom type home. That's why we look at it in the commercial zone. But that we would expect, you know, at minimum 10, but I know speaking to Brad Davis, the expectation is really more 20 years.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ben, I got one question. As far as lighting, let's go back to lighting.
Yeah.
Do you have to approve whether it's a light on top of the sign or do you have to approve that?
Yeah, we have standards related to how a sign can be internally or externally lit. So we'll work with them to make sure they're meeting those standards as well.
Would that include in a residential non-conforming? Is that going to get hairy because we're in a residential zoning? See what I'm saying?
Probably not, because I think you're still allowed to light them in a residential area too. We'll have to double check with them if it comes to the point where something needs to come back, we will, but I don't think it will need to because they are allowed to do some lighting in a residential district too.
So I'm trying to think through I know we're not the zoning board, but so if this model home, the intent is to use it as a show home for the next 10 to 20 years, why go through the trouble of rezoning to residential now and not wait until closer to time that property is ready to be sold as a residential? Yeah. Because now what we've created is kind of this quasi zone, right? We've got a property that's subjected to residential requirements and now asking for variances for general business requirements. and it doesn't really fit either. And so I'm just curious to know what kind of the train of thought was of rezoning it now versus waiting until it's ready to be flipped over.
And Paul may have some thoughts too. I think what we talked about for them was getting it rezoned now versus rezone in the future meant that they had a comfort level that they'd be able to do it in the future. So if they waited 10 or 20 years from now, you guys aren't up here, I'm not here, they don't want to get in a situation where now they can't sell it because they can't convert it back to a residential zoning classification because of some decision that may be made in the future by a plan commission or a council that they're not familiar with. So that gave them the comfort to make a pretty significant investment now, knowing that the zoning is in place for them to be able to accomplish those future plans when it came to that point.
And we don't have a zone that has characteristics of residential and general business requirements.
Not that would have cleanly allowed this to happen.
Right.
Like Paul mentioned, we do allow temporary model homes, but they're really meant to be temporary in a residential neighborhood as it's developing. And this is certainly something different than that.
So for example, if we had residential homes along East Street or Meridian or something like that, converting to like, say, a dentist office or some kind of, sole proprietor type business, they would seek variances under our current UDO, or we would rezone it?
Yeah, in some cases they might. It depends a little bit on what the use is. We do have a more of a neighborhood business zoning classification that does allow some commercial and residential in the same zoning district. But we have had some uses that have looked in those areas that have still needed variances because of parking or something like that too. So,
and this wouldn't fit that neighborhood classification because it's not really, even though it backs up to a neighborhood, it's really along, what's the name of the street? That runs along
Birchwood, and then the
Birchwood,
interstate right on
which
the
is
other side
not
of it.
that's yeah, okay. I'm tracking.
Yeah, there wasn't a logical, obvious solution here, and we chose what we thought was the best at the time.
Okay, thank you.
I got one more. Do we need to add, excuse me, to your staff recommendations about some wording that for needing to come back to planning and zone, not necessarily us, but to you for a sign or for the lighting?
We don't need to. That's something they're going to be required to do as part of the UDO when they come for the sign permit anyway. So it would be somewhat redundant to add it because they're already required to.
That's fine. Any other questions?
Just confirming before we go to the public comment, but we have an awning rendering that's not relevant to any variances, correct?
Yeah, there wasn't any variance that was
Okay,
necessary associated
perfect.
with that one. It was just this sign out front.
Just confirming.
Yep. Yeah, they are planning to put an awning over front of the entrance on the side of the house, but that's something that was permitted by right. They didn't need a variance for that. So
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for now, Ben. I'll let you come back and answer. Hold on a minute, but I'm going to open it for the public hearing. And so the meeting is now open to the public. If anybody cares to come forward and address it. And nobody's here, so we'll close the public end of the hearing and you can come back up and finish your whatever you need to say.
I don't think I had any other comments. There was a question why we went through and rezoned it to residential on the front end. To Ben's point, it removes some uncertainty. The use of kind of a permanent model home really isn't something that is anticipated by this or really any ordinance. It's just kind of a unique idea. Traditionally you put a model home in a subdivision. When the subdivision's built out, you remove the model home. But for more of a custom, long-lasting house, we just decided we needed a place to place it for a good long time. And then from just a certainty standpoint, we wanted to rezone it to residential so that at the end of the day, when ultimately this goes, we close our model home, we'd be able to sell it for residential uses, which is a considerably larger market. I mean, you mentioned dentist office. If you have a residential structure, you're really limited in what commercial uses could go in there. This we just see. I'd invite any of you to visit the house, but it's a very nice house, and we think it'd be more marketable as a residence than a light commercial.
Also to be used as a sales office, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so you'll have people working there.
Yeah, it is staffed. What will be a future garage is currently a sales office. I believe there are 2 sales offices in this location.
Okay. And any parking requirements? I know that's not part of the variance being sought, but because this is kind of in the gray area, and I noticed that the neighbor to the west has a pretty sizable
Yeah.
parking lot.
So
Share.
I don't have a good site plan, unfortunately, because the aerial photos haven't been updated but they do have a small parking area that wraps around behind the garage to the back. When we were out there, there was room there's probably 3 or 4 cars you can put back there and not be in the driveway. So they do have parking.
Thank you. Okay, since there's no further questions, I'll look for motion.
I move we approve docket number 25-6 in regards to the sign variance with the following conditions. And that being that the applicant remove the sign from the subject property no later than 3 months after the home on the property permanently reverts back to residential use.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Kelly?
Corey Koontz,
Yes.
Chad Kiger,
Yes.
Bruce Polly,
Yes.
Ron Edwards, Lori Gross.
Yes.
Carrie, congratulations. Okay, one more item for tonight. Docket number 25-12, Lebanon Community Schools is requesting 3 development standard variances to replat the property located at 505 Ransdell Road and 1210 Ransdell Court. The property is zoned general industrial. Mr.
Thank you,
Bontrager.
Mr. Polly. Board members, this is the old bus barn out on Ransdell Court for Lebanon Community School Corporation. As y'all know, they're under construction on their new bus facility up by the middle school. And so they will keep a portion of this property for school use, but they are looking to try to market and or sell a portion of it. And if they want to pull up the screen and kind of show you the property outlined in yellow is what the school corporation owns. And that is actually 3 different parcels. You've got actually 2 landlocked parcels. There's one landlocked parcel here, one in the center that's also landlocked, and then the third parcel that has the bus garage on it that's on Ransdell Court. And so what they're looking to do is rearrange these 3 lots into 2 lots and put one of them, the western half or western 2/3 of it, on the market for sale. And this is in the general industrial zoning district that has a minimum lot size requirement of 5 acres and a minimum lot width requirement of 200 feet. I believe, well, none of these lots currently meets the minimum lot size requirement. This development and this plat was created before the zoning classification was put in place that it now is zoned. And so by default, because of the zoning district that we assigned to the property, we created legally existing non-conforming parcels because they don't meet the lot size requirements. And so they currently are legally existing. By rearranging the lots from 3 to 2 lots, they are required, it technically loses its legally existing status, and they're required to bring it up to current standards, which is not possible because this acreage in total is only 2.5 acres. So even if they turn it into 1 lot, they still can't meet the minimum lot size requirements. So they are going to need variances. In looking at this with them, and it's a little bit hard to see. Let me zoom in a little bit, see if we can see a little bit better. What they would like to do is create 2 lots out of those 3. You can see one is kind of in this purple color. They want to create access off of Ransdell Court for both of them. So they are providing access. And so the 1, 2, and part of the 3rd lot would all become 1 lot that you see outlined in purple here. And then the remaining that you see yellow would be the 2nd lot, both with access off of Ransdell Court. So there are 3 lots that are all non-conforming now. They're turning it into 2 lots that are probably slightly more conforming, but still non-conforming. And so as we looked at this with them, this in terms of creating lots that would be accessible makes the most sense, because now you don't have landlocked parcels. They do all have access off a public street. So this is better than what it is now, and would allow them to be able to sell it without creating an issue for access on one of those properties. But there's no way for them to meet all of the ordinance standards for the general industrial zoning district. So that's what the 3 variances are for that we see here this evening. The first is for minimum lot size. Again, as I mentioned, minimum in the general industrial zoning district is 5. And these are, one of them is about 1.5 acres and the other is about 1. In terms of minimum lot width, the minimum lot width of 200 feet. One of them only has a 50-foot lot width, and that would be the one in purple. The lot width along Ransdell Court. And then the lot frontage is of 150 feet. We've got one that's got about 50 feet and another that's about 125 feet. So neither one of them are able to meet the lot frontage requirements. So those are the 3 variances that are before you tonight: is lot size, lot width, and lot frontage. We'll do all 3 of them at the same time, because in terms of the criteria, they're all very similar. So the first is that the approval of these 3 variances will not be injurious to public health, and staff's determined that relief from the lot size, width, and frontage requirements will pose no imminent threat to public health. Proposed lots will have safe access to a public street and will not create any safety issues with adjacent lots. The second one, my paper's sticking together here. Use and value of the area adjacent to the property included will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Staff has determined the requested variance for relief from those 3 requirements will not affect the use and value of the area adjacent. Proposed lot sizes will have no notable impact on adjacent uses, which are of similar size to the proposed lots. Number 3, the strict application of the terms of the UDO will result in practical difficulties. Staff has determined that the strict application will result in practical difficulties. The 3 current lots do not meet the zoning district standards. They're of similar size to adjacent lots that are also legally existing non-conforming. The proposed lots are slightly more compliant with the zoning standards, but there is actually no physical way for them to meet the standards. That's the practical difficulty in use of the property. And finally, staff recommendation. Planning staff recommends approval of the development standards variance requests to permit relief from the minimum lot size, lot width, and lot frontage requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance. And actually, before I ask for questions, I will note that the applicant is not here, which your rules of procedure would suggest that it should be continued. I don't expect this to be a contentious issue, and with the board's blessing, I would say we go ahead and go forward with it if you're okay with that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ben?
Just confirming, there's not going to be a new curb cut back there, correct?
No, I believe there's access. Both of those already have access off of that. Let me see if, I wonder if you can.
I can't remember from driving back there if that is a raised curb or not. It may just be a quote unquote round. So,
It looks like right now the access comes off of this southern part of the lot. They might have to do some reconfiguration on that second lot to get access out front there. But there is room for it.
okay, perfect.
Any other questions? Okay. I guess at this point, we'll open it for a public hearing. If anybody wants to step forward and address the board, come forward. Christy, you got anything to say? Okay, we'll close the public end of the hearing, and I guess the next question is everybody okay with the applicant not being here and going ahead and voting?
Would we need any motions?
Yeah, but if the board would like to move forward, I would suggest a motion to waive the requirement of the applicant being present.
I'll make a motion to waive the requirement, not requiring the applicant to be present.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion is waived. The motion is not waived. Okay, then now we need another vote. in favor of the three variances?
I'll make a motion to approve docket 25-12 as written.
Corey Coons,
Yes.
Chad Peiger,
Yes.
Bruce Polly,
Yes.
Ron Edwards. Yes. Lori Gross.
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, congratulations, Mr. Franson. Do we have any other comments or questions or concerns for tonight? Okay, then the next regular meeting will be Monday, May the 5th, 7 PM right here. Look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Did you second it? Who?
Yeah.
Everybody seconded.
Okay.
You can give that one to Ron.
Okay. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.